Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Breath live stream. I'm your host, Jeremy Tennell, systems designer and coherence coach. This week is week 6, day 28 of our 14-week journey entitled The Path of Personal Transformation. Today we are discussing a concept called circles of influence. I don't know about you, but I found myself jumping into some deep rabbit holes online in my life. My attention and my focus have been laser pointed at the global and political events happening all around me. And there's been times where I felt a deep and sustaining angst and frustration, a real sense of powerlessness. In the face of despicable leadership decisions and heartbreaking violence and destructive policies, I couldn't do anything about it, no matter what I tried. Protest and argument, or even trying to propagate my discontent and my ideas for solutions, they only ended up leaving me feeling more disenfranchised. Have you ever found yourself completely drained? Not from what you've done, but from what you were thinking about? A desired change that hasn't happened? A situation that you can't control? Something you saw online that pulled you in? And before you knew it, your energy's gone and your clarity is gone, and nothing in your actual environment has changed. The reality is, most of us put our energy outside of our circles of influence. We're thinking about things we can't control. We're trying to manage outcomes that we don't determine. We're reacting to realities we don't actually inhabit. And it's not only exhausting, it's debilitating. This misplaced focus removes our empowerment and our personal sovereignty. There's a simple way to understand this. In our lives, there are things we can control, but they are very, very few. There are things we can influence, and those are a longer list. There are things that we experience, and then there is things, no matter how painful, that is just information. But in our world today, those lines become blurred. Yesterday, we talked about the concept of binary thinking, how the mind simplifies complexity. And that's relevant here, because what we're looking at is what happens when we start to try and control that simplified version of reality. When we condense everything into binaries in the way we communicate this reality around us, and then insist that all of us grab hold of one side of that binary or the other and descend into a singularity. We are condensing a very complex and complicated reality. And here's the hard truth for most of us. We can control nothing in this world. I have no control over other people's reactions, the outcomes of most situations, or the direction of complex systems around me. The reality is, my sovereignty does not exist outside of myself. It begins in a much smaller place, within my intention, my awareness, my regulation, my ability to choose my response. And when we lose sight of where we truly have influence, and we begin to extend ourselves outward, we are giving away that sovereignty. We are placing it into a void. When we are focused on everything outside of ourselves, like news cycles and social media, other people's emotions, situations we are not actually even in. Slowly, that desire to control expands beyond where we actually have influence. And our actual empowerment, our sovereignty, begins to fade. It's a paradox. From a systems perspective, our circles of influence are defined, they define the boundaries of our agency. When these boundaries are unclear within us, the patterns become stimulus, emotional reaction, external focus, an attempt to control, and frustration. Our energy is directed outward, towards variables we have no control over. Our ability to influence systems are structured through an internal state, not an external state. It moves from this internal state out into our perception and our ability to choose a response and to interact and influence over time. But when we've overextended that perceived circle of influence, it becomes an external input. We begin to identify with it. And we find that we become overexposed and dysregulated, which puts us into a reactive behavior pattern. And this just gets reinforced in a feedback loop, like a microwave, like a microphone being placed next to a speaker. And that awful sound that can come from it is a dissonant sound. Our system becomes unstable. Not because the external world is chaotic, even though it might be. We become unstable because our internal boundaries are underdefined and out of alignment. When awareness is reintroduced into that pattern, it shifts. We move from stimulus to an awareness in which we hold. We look at and take inventory of where our boundaries are. We recognize where our influence is. And we begin to self-regulate to bring us back into alignment. We can then engage in an intentional response. But without our realistic perspective on what we truly have influence over and the boundaries to internally define them, our sovereignty disappears. Once we place those boundaries back into place, we regain precision in how we engage with systems. Our modern human systems are not neutral, and they are not passive. They are designed to capture your attention and expand your perceived circle of concern and influence. Social platforms and 24-hour news cycles are continuously presenting information and demanding that it requires your response, as if it belongs inside your circle of influence. But most of that doesn't belong in your circle of influence, no matter how hard or heart-wrenching that information can be. We are consuming far more data than ever before about people we don't know, situations we can't affect, outcomes we don't influence, believing we can yell loud enough into the void to affect change. But the result is the quiet erosion of our personal sovereignty. Because when everything feels important, when all we can see is the flames encroaching and surrounding us, nothing is clear, and there is no path forward. And when nothing is clear, we lose the ability to respond effectively to what actually matters, to what we actually have influence over. Reclaiming our clarity is not about disengaging from the world. Wanting to change the world for good isn't a poor motivation. But if we want the world to change, We have to start with a change that we are empowered to make. Our circles of influence begin within. Today, I want you to spend some time with your journals. I want you to map your circles of influence. You're going to draw 4 circles embedded within each other. The inner circle is going to be what you control. The next circle is going to be what you influence. The circle out from that is going to be things you experience. And the farthest circle is going to be information and data that is being pushed in your direction, but feels like it belongs in an inner circle. Start within. What do you actually control? What do you have control over? You have control over your intention. You have control over your choices to how you're going to respond to a situation. Spend some time with that one. And then move out to what you actually influence. Your children, maybe your friends. And then move out to the experiences, the things that you are experiencing in the world, that you are physically experiencing. If you aren't in a war zone, you are not experiencing that. But if you are, then write it down. And then information. What is outside of my circle of influence? And then I want you to fill in and do a journal entry on how that makes you feel. What does that make you think about when you put it into that perspective? All right, let's go ahead and move into our breath work. So find a comfortable place and shift your hips. Roll your shoulders. We're going to do about a 5-minute session. And let's place our hand over our heart. And let's take a deep breath in. And exhale with a sigh. Again, in. Exhale with a sigh. All right, and we're going to breathe in for about 6 seconds. And out for about 6. In. Out. In. Out. Maintain that pattern. Relax your forehead. Relax your jaw. Relax your shoulders. Occupy your mind with an internal inventory of gratitude. What are you thankful for? I am thankful for this day. I am thankful for the sunrise. I am thankful for my support system. I am thankful for the opportunities of today brings. Expand it outwards and let it become more deeper, more personal. Keep the pattern going. When your mind wanders, come back to your breath and your gratitude. Stay with it. This is where the benefits are in the practice. Come back to breath and gratitude. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. Continue to regulate. On the next inhale, exhale with a sigh. One more. And come back into this space. You don't need to hold everything. You don't need to respond to everything. And you don't need to carry what is never yours to carry. Your power is not in trying to control the system. It's in knowing where you begin within it. I'll see you tomorrow.